really glad to be back. Um, so the title of my message is Life Forevermore, and I actually did a version of this during Easter season, and I thought it's still kind of Easter season, and people really liked it. What I want to do is touch on what we teach in New Thought and in CSL, and what all the great religions teach on on life forevermore, on eternal life. Okay. And I want to start off, I want to set the tone by reading one of the great New Thought works of all time by one of my favorite authors. The title of the book is Experiencing the Beacon Within, and the author is Reverend Dr. Ron Fox. So, um, and the title, I think this really does set the tone for what I want to do this morning. The title of the piece is Life Goes On. Life is fragile. We never know when our time on this planet will be over. Our teaching offers us hope of more to come after our time here is complete. Ernest Holmes taught that we are immortal. We will continue on after the experience of physical death. He wrote, "We need fear nothing in the universe. We need not be afraid of God. We may be certain that all will be at the final goal and no one will be missing." When he was 17, Steve Jobs read, "If you live each day as if it will be your last, someday you'll be right." For me, that's a call to use my time here well. Each day is a gift. Many of us live limited, fearful lives when we were put here to do wondrous things with our time. Dr. Holmes writes that there is a voice that calls to us, "Arise and come forth," a voice that urges us to live a full and expansive life where there are no limits other than the ones we choose to believe in. In 2011, Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel almost died. He later wrote that what he learned from that experience was that every day is a new beginning, every handshake a promise. He continued, "If life is not a celebration, why remember it? If life is not an offering to the other, what are we doing on this earth?" Ask yourself, how do I want to be remembered? And then live into that image. So, when Jesus was was at the tomb of his friend Lazarus, he said, "He shall rise again. I am the resurrection and the life. And though a man be dead, yet he shall live." So obviously, Jesus was speaking to the people there, but I think he was speaking to us too. And he was saying to us, we're all eternal beings and we all are going to live forever. You and I, Holmes says, you and I are as eternal right now as we are ever going to be. So years ago, I read something about the late Cardinal Joseph Berendine, and he said, when people ask him, "What's it like when we die?" He used to tell them, "I don't really know, to be honest." And then he decided one day to take a trip back to northern Italy, where his parents were born and raised, and he had never been there before. And after he was there a few days, he started to feel, "I know this place. I'm home." And he said he thinks when we make our transition, that's our word, not his, but when we make our transition, that's what it's going to be like for us. We're going to like walk through one door to a new place, and we're going to look around and say, "I know this place. I'm home." So Parker Palmer is a Quaker, and he facilitates what's called Clearness Committee. And what that is, a group gets together and by dialogue, they examine questions and try to come up with an understanding of what the questions mean. And so, in the particular dialogue that I'm going to discuss, the two questions that they were discussing were, what do I need to let go of? And what do I need to hang on to? And the discussion led to a breakthrough that the hang on question, what do I need to hang on to, was based on fear. It was this need to cling. And in discussing the two questions, they actually came up with what they thought was a more relevant third question. And that question was, what do I want to give myself to? What do I want to give myself to? And they looked at that as an abundance question. And they also looked at it as the key to a meaningful life. That when we look at that question, we can choose what it is we want to give our life to, see that as our chosen path, and then live it. So I want to tell you a Buddhist fable. At least I think it's a fable. So a Buddhist master is lying on his deathbed, and one of his students decides to go out and get him his favorite donut. And he comes back, he gives the master the donut, and the master takes a couple of bites, and then he starts to get weaker. And the student leans over and whispers in his ear, Master, do you have any last words? And the master opens up his eyes and he says, my, this cake is delicious. And then he closes his eyes and he dies. And the point of the story is that every moment is a gift, and that we should try to live life like that and enjoy every moment. Ernest Holmes wrote, at the center of confusion, there is peace. At the center of doubt, there is certainty. At the center of death, there is life. So some of you may be familiar with Stephen Levine, but he and his wife did a lot of writing about death. And in one of their books, they tell the story about somebody who goes to see his doctor, and the doctor tells him, you've got very little time left. You're going to die in a couple of months. And the guy said he felt as if a heavy load had been lifted, that he was free to live his life at last. And he never felt so safe. He never felt more freedom. He never felt more love, as though his life had been given to him. And when I read that story, it blew me away, and I felt really sad. I mean, think about that you live your entire life, and when somebody says you got a couple of months left to live, that's when you start to feel good about your life. That's when you start to feel the most love, and that a heavy burden has been lifted. You know, we don't have to wait till then. We can choose how we want to live, set the intention to do it, and then do it. So my guess is that if I give you the name Sogyal Rinpoche, most of you won't know who that is. But if so Linda's shaking her head, you do. So he wrote a book that's pretty famous called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And in that book, he said that we can use our life to prepare for our death. We can begin anytime to find meaning, and we can use every opportunity as a moment to prepare, because in Buddhism, they look at death and life as one whole. And, we might not say it like that in New Thought, but I think we do too, because we say, like I just said, that we're going to live eternally, that we can go through one door to another. And isn't that really looking at it as this one whole? But he also brings up another point that I really like and that I really want to share with you. It's a concept he calls active laziness. Now that sounds like it's, how could that be? But he says there's two different kinds of active laziness. There's Eastern active laziness and there's Western active laziness. So here's Eastern active laziness: hanging out all day with your friends, not doing anything worthwhile, soaking up the sun, drinking tea, listening to music, and gossiping. That's Eastern active laziness. Here's what he says is Western active laziness. He says it's cramming our lives with so much compulsive activity that there's no time to confront the real issues. He said our lives seem to live us. They have this bizarre momentum that we feel like we have no control over them. And I have to tell you, Becky said I could tell you this. When I told her this concept, she literally jumped off the chair and said, "That's me." And I bet that's probably some of you. We go around in circles. And what he said we need to do is to shake ourselves and say, what if I were to die tonight? What then? He said, death tells us how we must live because tomorrow isn't promised. So I want to give you an exercise that you could try sometime whenever you want to do it. Imagine that you're 90 years old and you're in great shape, great health, mentally and physically, and it's your birthday. And your friends decide to throw you a birthday party. And one by one, each of your friends gets up and makes a toast to you. What would you want them to say? Think of this: your spouse or significant other, your children, if you have children, your former work friends, your friends, your neighbors. In your mind, what would you want to hear them say? And whatever that is, that's what you want your life to stand for. And if in your mind, when you do that exercise, you like what you're hearing, that's great. If you don't like what you're hearing, just remember it's never too late to begin again. Holmes says that principle isn't bound by precedent. So just because something happened in the past doesn't mean that we have to carry it into the future. The late Rabbi Harold Kushner wrote a whole bunch of books. And his most famous book, I'm sure most of you heard of, Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? And in one of his books, he says, what frightens most people isn't death, it's insignificance. That the idea that we will be born and live and none of it will matter, that people really, really want to get it right. to feel that they have done something worthwhile with their lives. And he said, the purpose for life is to love, to reach out beyond ourselves, because really our life isn't measured by quantity. Our life is measured by the quality of how we lived it. So I want to read something to you. Um, I'm not sure where I got it, and I'm not sure who wrote it, but it's called Daily Dose of Inspiration. At the end of our life, what really matters is not what we bought, but what we built, not what we got, but what we shared, not our competence, but our character, and not our success, but our significance. Live a life that matters. Live a life of love. So the next person I want to speak about, Becky introduced me to, and maybe some of you have heard of him. His name is Dan Buettner. Any of you heard of the Blue Zones Project? Anybody? No? Okay. I'll tell you what it is. Actually, if I'm going to give you a little bit of it, but if you're interested, Netflix did a series on this. So the Blue Zones, Buettner came up with these doing research. He had 5 initially. Now he has 6 areas where people live the longest. I have so the areas are Okinawa, Greece, Sardinia, Costa Rica, Loma Linda, California, and Singapore. And in fact, one of them, Okinawa, if you walk around there, I've never been there, but read this. If you walk around there, it's not unusual to see people all over there that are 100 and more. And what separates them, there are several things. One is their diet. They eat, I guess the Mediterranean diet is what they eat, and they eat small meals. They don't just eat 3, they eat several small meals. They also live a life of purpose. And also, and I'm going to get back to this again, they also, friendship and relationships are key. So I want to tell you a story about that I read that I believe is a true story. So a fellow moved from Greece to the United States when he was a young man. And after he was here 25 years, he started to be sick, and he went to see 3 different doctors, and all 3 said, you only have a matter of months to live. So he decided to move back to Greece to be with his friends. And he did. And he moved up, I think it was in the mountains, and he would be with them doing what I said they do, the meals, the friendship, drinking wine together. 25 years later, he decided to go back to the US to show his doctors, look at me. All 3 of his doctors were dead. Um, so Harvard University did a study on how close relationships figure in keeping people happy. And what they found was more than IQ, more than genes, more than social status, more than any other single factor, relationships determine people's outlook and people's happiness. Isn't that incredible? More than our genes, more than anything. So I want to stop for a minute because I talked to you before. Some of us were talking about the fact my center closed. So I graduated from the School of Ministry in 1998. So it's like 27 or 28 years that I've been a minister. And I have given talks on community, and I always believed in community, okay? I never really got how important community was until my center closed, until my wife, who's sitting right here, would come to me almost every week and say, I miss our community. How I would have other people say the same thing to me. And so I'm just mentioning that to you. I mean, you guys have a community. I see your bulletin sometimes, and you always seem to me, Reverend Mary, it's taking you doing some cool stuff. You know, I look at community as a place we can go to when we're happy, when we're sad, when we want to bitch about something, when a place where we can go and know whoever we are, we're accepted for who we are. So I would just say to you, from somebody who's learned, don't take it for granted and nourish it. So I want to just do two more things before I close. So I read a while back about a fellow who had cancer, and he was going to a counselor, and the counselor um, would do meditations, guided meditations with him, and he never could get into them. And one day he did. He got into the meditation and he closed his eyes and he saw himself with his mother's arms around him. And he stayed in the meditation and realized it wasn't his mother's arms, it was his own arms that were around him. And he realized that that was his place of safety, not outside where he had been looking for it. And the point is that our safety zone is within where spirit lives, which we all know. And so Wayne Muller is a minister and a writer and a speaker. In fact, when I was the chair of the Asilomar Committee in 2000, I forgot if it was 8 or 9 when he was there, but he was our main speaker. And he's written a number of books. One of the books is How Shall I Live, Knowing I Shall Die? And I just want to share with you some thoughts that he had. He said, the heart of most spiritual practice is remember. Remember who you love. Remember what is sacred. Remember what is true. Remember you will die and that this day is a gift. Remember how you wish to live. So I want to close with another piece that I don't remember where I got, and I don't know who wrote it, but you'll see it's pretty touching. She said, don't call the doctor. I want to fall asleep peacefully with your hand in mine. He told her about the past, how they met, their first kiss. They didn't cry, they smiled. They didn't regret anything, they were grateful. Then she repeated softly, I love you forever. He returned her words, gave her a kiss on the forehead. She closed her eyes and fell asleep peacefully with her hand in his. Love is really all that matters because everyone comes into this world with nothing other than love and leaves with nothing other than love. Think about it. Profession, career, bank account, our goods are just tools, nothing more. Everything stays here. So just love. Love those that love you, love as if there was nothing more important in your life. So God bless you guys. And I'll look forward to being on with you in a few minutes and we'll have some conversation.